Cami Taliaferro-Barber.
And I'm Delia Taliaferro-Barber, and we're coming to you live from the Kamiak High School newsroom. Today is an informative piece on red light cameras, particularly questions concerning the following topics, the details of which I will turn over to my fellow anchor to disclose. Cami, take it away.
Right. Today we'll be answering sponsor-approved questions. The first ones being, how do red light cameras affect driver behavior, and do they really increase traffic and pedestrian safety? Answering these questions and more is our on-site reporter Crystal, who will be interviewing some of our locals. Crystal?
Thank you, Cami. It's quite a scene here. Right alongside me, we have Tony Mitchell, a tool engineer at Boeing. Tony, could you tell us about how red light cameras have affected you personally?
Well, I personally get nervous when I approach an intersection that I know is going to be monitored, especially if I get to a traffic light and it's been green for a while. I slow down a lot more than I probably should. My buddy Stan tells me all the time that it's going to get me into collision one of these days, but I'm just so afraid of getting on their radar that I can't seem to help it.
I see. So it changes your driving habits?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Interesting. Thank you so much for your input, Tony. And now back to you at the studio.
Thanks, Crystal. Wow, Tony brought up a really good point. I thought that heightened awareness was brought around by modern intersections was a wholly positive thing, and we certainly hear all about the good, especially when we hear people slowing down when safe, to the point where crashes are decreased in neighbors all around the country.
Absolutely. I think the negatives need to be addressed too. They seem to conflict so much with the goal of red light cameras in the first place, which is to prevent drivers from going through red lights, and by the extension of intersectional side collisions that would occur as a result. However, I would argue that this increases the risk of rear-end collisions, since drivers are notoriously slamming onto their brakes to avoid ticketing.
While we're on the subject of ticketing, what percentage of the tickets actually bring in revenue? And to what end? How much of it actually goes to funding state issues rather than the camera companies? To answer these questions, we have sent out a second reporter, Braden, to interview Lisa Kaufman, a statistician who has been dealing with the numbers related to those issues personally. Coming at you, Braden.
Thanks, Delia. Now, Ms. Kaufman, before we get into your hard numbers, could you just tell us your overall opinion on red light cameras in relation to the ticket issue?
Absolutely I can. You see, Mr. Pop, in short, the battle to keep drivers from running red lights seems to be achieving more profit for the state than any actual success. If anything, the sheer amount of tickets that have been doled out by these intersection cameras, catching people hitting the gas instead of the brake as the light turns yellow, or who make what police like to call rolling right turns, instead of coming to a full stop right off the bat.
Fascinating. Could you elaborate?
Certainly. Each state charges fines differently as they're not standardized, so they can vary to a great degree, from $50 in New York City to about $500 in California. So there isn't necessarily a set percentage to go by. Depending on the state, they could either be hesitant to rely on the cameras to generate income, while others use the money to contribute to health care and transportation expenses. While red light cameras may or may not be prohibited in specific regions, they may have some restrictions on their use, which affects revenue as well.
I guess that would mean that the percentages of revenue paid to the camera companies would fluctuate to him.
Correct. It all depends on what percentage is agreed upon between the camera companies and the state. But this amount has been known to exceed 80% of the overall revenue per ticket, leaving less than a fifth to the city, state, or country.
Wow, I had no idea. I suppose I'd never really thought about the business side of the deal. Thanks, Ms. Kaufman, for talking to us today.
No problem, Braden.
Thanks, Braden, and I think that's all the time we have today for here at Defensive 9 News.
Thank you, Makoto, and have a good day.